Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. So today we're going to be doing some rug tutorials that goes along with my previous video, the Oasis resort. And yeah, so these are going to be the tile rugs, the water fountain rugs, and I even threw in a little extra tutorial for how to make your own Persian rug. And so if you enjoyed this video, please feel free to leave a thumbs up, subscribe, and set your notifications on. Let's get started on all of these different rugs. For the tile rug, I am using this rocky texture and making it this orangish light color, and I'm going to just start by lining the edges of the rug with a darkish blue line, and it's not the full dark one, it's like kind of like the mid-tone. And so yeah, your focus right now is just to line the edges. We'll add the slits later to give it that tile texture. Once you've added all of the lines, you have a perfect seamless road, and now you're going to be adding the slits. So I like to use the scissor tool, and what that does is it basically just cuts right into the motif and makes it back to the base color. So I use the scissor tool in order to shape the tile formations, and then I add in more rectangles in that same blue color, and I create the smaller slits so that the gap is not too big. You'll notice that touch of magic is very finicky like many things in the game, and so you have to kind of play around with the sizing a little bit just to make sure things are not sticking out awkwardly. Afterwards, I'm going to add gradients onto every other tile. I'm going to start with the darker blue ones, and I'm going to use the darkest shade of blue. And then I'm just sizing it, and you don't have to worry about how it spills over to the center of the rug because we will be fixing that later. I use a bigger rectangle and use the scissor tool once again to basically cut out that excess gradient. I'm going to repeat the slits on the other side, and this is just a nice hack. I like to change the texture to a grid, that way I can align it perfectly and make sure it is all centered. So I actually forgot to add the lighter gradients, but I'm just going to go back and add it into this teal color. And the reason why I do the teal color is so that it gives it a unique color shade that is not in the color wheel. And so I'm also trying to match this very closely to the tree planters that we got from the Agrabah realm. Once you do that, because I did mine a little bit late, I'm just going to drag those motifs down to where the line is that cuts off that excess gradient, and that way it will still remain cut. And now I'm just going to add the same exact gradient on the other side before cutting it with the scissor tool. For the center, I am going to make these squares into diamonds, and we're going to line the edges. That way it forms a triangle shape. And this is so that when you place a bunch of these rugs in a succession, then they will flow seamlessly. I I'm adding a gradient on top just for that little extra depth. I like the way that the gradient looks on it. And then for the center, we're just going to do the full diamond with the square and make sure that it is like the same size and it is centered in the center of the rug. For the last touches, I am using these motifs, which are either in Jasmine or Aladdin's Friendship Quest, and I actually like to use the non-global effect. I think it is, I don't know what it's called, but basically whenever you set down a motif, it's always automatically in the global effect, and I just like to toggle that off. And because of that, I can stretch the motif however I like, but you have to make sure it is centered because it moves around really quickly. Here I am showing you that globally, you can put it anywhere and it will lay flat perfectly, but if you take it out, it stretches depending on how you move your cursor, and so I dragged my cursor down and it made it more stretched. Here's the finished rug, and I'm showing you the tree planters in reference to what I did to basically make it pretty identical. Moving on, I'm going to be making another kind of Persian rug just to show you guys the process and how you can make your own rug. So I'm using a light blue and a dark blue with this rug texture just to create the base, and then you can disregard this step because I end up removing these corners anyway, but if you make your own rug, you can absolutely add these corners. You will see in a minute. There's another rug I did where the corners are there, but for this specific rug, I removed them anyways. I'm going to be adding these palm tree motifs that are in the star path and just duplicate them, and that way it'll spread across the entire rug. And then I duplicate that motif and just turn it around, and I make it a shade or two lighter than the base color of the rug, and that just adds a little bit extra texture. And I really like the way that the gold kind of clashes with that blue, and it just creates an overall more dimensional rug. I will now be using the rectangle tool and basically just cutting out the rug in the shape. I like to make a bigger rectangle throughout the center of the rug and just cutting out the center entirely, but I'm going to be leaving the borders so that it has that palm tree design. I'll also be adding some squares to just cut out the middle entirely, that way you only have the borders. As I do the squares in the middle, I'm actually leaving a little bit of a gap just to create an extra design where there's a thinner line that matches the design of the borders. And I think that just looks really unique, and I'm all about making different unique designs for every Persian rug I do. I'm using this floral motif and basically just lining the edges that I had just cut. I pre-measured it, as you probably saw before, so that it fits perfectly into those rectangles, and I'm just trying to sparingly use the motifs because, you know, we only got 50 layers, and too often I'm using up to 50 and sometimes I need more. So just really kind of measuring it just to make sure that I can not only fit it but also have enough motifs for everything else. I went back and added the corners, but this time I'm just putting it in the center because I like the way it looks that way instead of the outer corners. I'm going to be adding a gradient just to give the center a little bit of depth because I thought it was looking a little flat, and I'm just dragging that motif down until it is kind of underneath some of the other layers, that way it doesn't clash. And yeah, I am just going to change the color and also resize it to fit that rectangle perfectly. And you'll see that I choose a shade that is just one up from the original base color. If you go too light, it'll look a little bit weird, so I'm just using this mid-tone blue. I'm just adding some florals for decoration, and you'll notice that in a lot of my Persian rugs, I like to add the centerpiece that is pretty signatory of a Persian rug, and so I'm using these floral motifs, and I'm basically just mirroring them to make this oval shape, and I think that really just finishes off the rug. I'm going to be adding these palm trees. They're a separate one from the previous ones, and I'm just making it a dark blue and putting it underneath the gradient, and I like the way it kind of peeks out. It kind of just adds extra texture to the rug, and so I'm just going to repeat that on the other side. And then for just a finishing touch, I'm just going to add that same motif from the last rug and use the non-global tool and just put it on either side. And here you have a Persian rug. And I hope you guys can use these like tools to make your own rug. You can make your own color and your own patterns. So now we're going to be making our fountain rugs. Yay! They're kind of hard, but I'll walk you through it, don't worry. So for the center rug, you're going to use the marble texture and then just go from darkest to lightest and gloss it up. And here you have a very simple water rug. That's the easiest one, trust me. For the second rugs, we're basically doing the left-hand corner, which can also go in the bottom right corner. And a tip is that no matter where you're standing, the rug will always drop exactly where you're standing. So I like to use the tile rug from before as a placeholder to just basically create a center piece where I can stand. That way the rug will drop exactly where it needs to. And you're gonna definitely have to move around a bit just to make it sure that it is fully centered. And this step is very important, so be patient with this, because if it's not centered, then the design will look a little funky. So once I have my position, I'm going to basically create the water rug again, and that'll be our base. So once you have the water rug, basically I am just going to try to carve out this curved shape for the start of the fountain. And so I use a lot of different shapes. I use the square, and I also use a bunch of curved lines. And as you can see, I am just trying to carve out as best as I can a smooth curve, and then filling up the space. And it doesn't have to be perfect right now because you're gonna just keep adding on motifs. And luckily, this is a simple design for every rug, so you have a lot of motifs to use for your 50 item limit. And as you can see, I use a lot of different curves and also different sizes, and I'm just trying to create a shape. And honestly, for the left corner, the shape itself doesn't matter. You don't have to make it perfect, but what does matter is how you do the middle rugs, which rely on this rug. I'm adding another curve, but I'm going to use the scissor tool so that it reflects the water instead. And I am just going to make sure that there's an even cut between the middle rug and this rug. I'm just covering up that excess that was over there in the corner, and now I am just adding in a border, which is this beige color. And as you can see, I'm just haphazardly putting the curves down, and it looks kind of weird, but you're just going to keep doing that until you cover everything, and you'll be using the same lines and the same curved lines in the same green color to just clean it up. And I thought the green initially looked a little plain, which was why I started adding these golden motifs, and I think they just kind of add a luxurious feel to it. here you have your left top corner, which will also serve as your right bottom corner. For the next one, I'm doing the right top corner, which will also serve as the bottom left corner, and I'm just going to repeat the process. I wanted to show you guys exactly why it's important for placement. As you can see here, I am just barely moving my character so that the rug can be centered with the middle, and you'll see it's finicky. It takes some time, but once you get it centered, then you're pretty much good to go. One thing I forgot to add in this video was that I want to make sure that I have the left corner that we just completed already next to the middle corner. That way I can frequently exit out of the rug design and make sure that the curves look exactly the same or as close as it can get to symmetrical. And this was just something that, I'll be honest with you, it's a lot of eyeballing. I don't really think there's a way to make sure it is perfectly symmetrical without much work, so I think you just have to keep both of them side by side while you're working on the other one and making sure that it looks close to symmetrical. And I'll be honest, like, my rugs were also not symmetrical. This is the final rug, and this is the formation we're going to be using. So this one's the most important because you're basically connecting the two ends from the bottom and top corners, and you're going to make the middle of the rug. And so I'm going to just repeat the process. I'm going to try to find the center of the rug and go from there. So my thought process when doing the middle was basically just first and most importantly try to get the ends to connect and worry about the middle layer. So I am just once again using the curved motifs and I'm just carving out a shape, and the middle looks a little weird in the beginning, but I'm going to fix that later. Right now my focus is again just connecting the ends. I'm using again the curved motif with the scissor tool, and I am just going to start basically refining the middle and making it so that the middle rug, of course, blends seamlessly with this one. I don't know what kind of shape I was going for originally, but it ended up being this sort of hourglass figure, and I mean, I think the result was pretty good, but you can use this principle with basically any shape. And you might notice that it doesn't perfectly align, but that's only because the rug is not fully centered. My mistake, but just believe me, trust me guys, it is aligned. As we finish off this rug, I guess the overall principles is just use a bunch of different little motifs to shape your things, and of course, if anything to take away from this video, use the scissor tool. It is life-changing. I honestly would not have been able to make half of these rugs without the scissor tool. So this is the final rug result, and you will see in my Oasis resort video I use both of these, or I double these rugs, and I think the result was great. Thank you so much for watching. Please leave a like and subscribe, and I really hope you found this helpful. Until next time, friends.